Hey everybody, it's Maddie from the Calming the Chaos Collective. For those of you that don't know me, I am the founder and the moderator for Calming the Chaos Collective. And just as a reminder, this is a place we just get vulnerable and talk about our anxiety, talk about try to help each other out in figuring out what's next for us on the next path. So just welcome. If you come on, just say hi. I can often see this little eyeball with the numbers next to it, but I don't always see who's there. So just want to make sure that you say hi so I can see you and say hi back. So today we're talking about vulnerability. Here's the thing. This is a really hard thing for me. I think I put in my comment that I often just feel like the wind has been taken out of my lungs when I start thinking about vulnerability. And it's so hard for us because our brain is developed over time to learn to not trust. Lots of things happen that make that happen. Sometimes it's just, we get hurt. That's part of learning as we get into relationships, we get hurt. We make decisions, we get hurt, and that constant, not constant, but this consistent, okay, I love someone and they hurt me, then makes this neural pathway show up that then we go back to every time we get into another relationship. And, it's kind of difficult because over time, then we stop being vulnerable to people because we don't feel like that we can trust anybody. So as my story is I learned over many situations and lots of years that vulnerability wasn't my friend. I would often get really, I learned to start closing myself off. I can appear like I am all into this relationship. But what one of my friends finally said to me is that you are great at giving, but you don't allow me to give, and therefore this is not a relationship that's back and forth. And I just think that is so, so true. Hey, Linda, it's good to see you from Philadelphia. So I'm glad to see you. So we're talking about vulnerability. So some of the words that you guys use that I thought were really powerful, and I'm going to have to put my glasses on. I'm trying to take them off because of the glare. So Ashley said, only we can really connect. Vulnerability is the only way we can really connect. Ricky mentioned that it's a tremendous risk, but it's what we have to do to be close to people. Sean, I love some of her words. She just kind of did this little brain dump and she said weakness, fear, and beauty. And I think all of those are true. And so when vulnerability works, when we are not hurt by people, when we get into a relationship, then it feels so amazing to have this back and forth that we're both being vulnerable and sharing. And what does that mean? It just means that we're telling them our story, that we're trusting someone with our story. And as my beautiful friend Summer once said to me, she said, if you're not telling your story, you're not giving you other people the opportunity to tell your story, their story, and then it misses a big way to connect. And I think this storytelling is so powerful in our culture and in what we do. And part of the vulnerability is knowing I'm going to tell my story to you. You may not understand it, but I am praying that there's going to be some empathy back. And what I think is remarkable about my own journey with vulnerability is I went through a situation where God really didn't give me the option to not be vulnerable anymore. I knew that I had surface friendships for most of my life. I knew that I had secrets that I didn't tell anyone. I knew that I was still trying to be this perfect person that everybody loves and everybody likes. And God kept kind of following me around saying, you know what, Maddie, this isn't the way you're supposed to live. And then he finally just had this traumatic event happen in my life that I didn't have a choice. I had to be vulnerable to people. Excuse me. It's allergy season. I think what's so beautiful about that, though, is that when I didn't have that choice anymore and I had to be vulnerable, the amazing friendships I made, the amazing relationships I have made since, the connections I've made with people because I found out that so many people lived my journey just like I lived theirs, and nobody knew it because we weren't talking about it. Does that mean I run around and I'm vulnerable to every person I meet? Absolutely not. There are boundaries, right? We talk about those boundaries. But what I think is really true about what Ashley said is it's really the only way that we can truly connect with people. If you are telling me things and I'm not telling you things back, then we're not in a true relationship. I'm the one that has the power to be able to help you, but I'm not allowing you to help me. Linda says vulnerability comes with risks. First tell God, then tell God who God reveals to you. I think that's a great idea. And that's exactly, nice segue, Linda, because that's exactly what I was about to go to. This vulnerability also includes our relationship with God, right? So if I don't trust God to take care of me, then I have all this anxiety that is just rolling around, and that prevents me from having a relationship. And so sometimes, and that's exactly what I do, Linda, I just try to stop and listen and hear him say to me, it is time. This is the person that I need you to be vulnerable with. Sometimes I don't listen because it's hard. Vulnerability is hard because I'm, and I think most of us are afraid of rejection. We're afraid that we're not going to get that back in return. We're afraid that we're not worthy, right? I always talk about my base emotions and my base feelings and thoughts I get down to, and it's always that I'm not worthy. And so just make sure that, that we are starting with God, because if we can have a vulnerable relationship with God, then he can direct us who to have their vulnerability around us and who is trustworthy. Are we going to get hurt? Yes, we are. Vulnerability is not about picking the right people that aren't going to hurt you, because we're all human and we all make mistakes. And I have unintentionally hurt people in my life, just like I'm sure some of you have. And I have had people unintentionally hurt me that I trusted. But you also can't have a true connection. So it's this balance between who can I trust to be vulnerable with, and who is God telling me that I need to be vulnerable with, and also then just putting boundaries around yourself so that you have that protection. So I think the big thing I want you guys to hear me say is two things. One, we have to make a choice to be vulnerable, and we have to know that sometimes we're going to get hurt in that process because people are human. But always, when I look back at the situations where I've been vulnerable to someone and they have hurt me, I have learned so much. I have learned so much from those situations that I don't know that I would have learned. Somewhere along the way, we become very hardened to that because our brain keeps going, this isn't safe, right? But you can't have the true connections with people if you're not vulnerable, they don't know your story. If you don't accept help, this is always my big thing. You don't accept help like you provide to other people. And one of the things I always tell my clients is, if you're talking about all this stuff that they're doing and they're going through, and I'm like, okay, well, where can you find space to ask someone for help? And they always say, well, I don't ask for help. That's not what I do. And I'm like, okay, but how many people do you help? And that is something that I really want you guys to think about, it's a give and take. Vulnerability is a give and take, and relationships are about vulnerability and that give and take. The other thing I think that's really important is just remember that anxiety really affects vulnerability in a big way, because we're always, if we're in those moments of anxiety, our brain, I'm going to take these off because I have a glare, our brain is constantly doing this. Well, if I tell them what's going to happen, are they going to say this? I'll have entire conversations of my head that will never happen because I can't read minds and I can't, tell the future. But the anxiety keeps us from being vulnerable because anxiety is always about fear. So if you're not being vulnerable, one of the things I would recommend is just, write down, what are you afraid of? This person, I want to be closer to them, but I'm not telling them my story. Why is that? Most of us, because we're afraid of rejection, or we're afraid people are going to find out that we're not perfect, whatever that is for you. So my challenge to you today is to just put in the comments. By the way, again, if you're on, say hi, so I can see you. And if you're watching in the replay, just say hi and put replay so that I can come by and say hi. But I want you guys to put in the comments after you've watched this, what is your biggest fear about being vulnerable? What is it that you are afraid of when you start thinking about that, when you start thinking about being vulnerable to someone and your chest starts feeling pressure or your head starts hurting, whatever that looks like. What are you afraid of? So that we can continue the conversation this week. And then later in the week, as always, we'll be stepping through, okay, where are some coping mechanisms that we can put into place to help you figure out how to be vulnerable so that you can have those true relationships. Because I'm going to tell you, I have never had the kind of friendships I have had until the time now in my life that I've decided I am going to be vulnerable to people. It is not easy. And I often don't do it because that's my MO. But those friendships and those relationships are so much more what God has intended. So just again, say, put in the comments what you're afraid of when it comes to vulnerability. And then we'll keep working on this week so that we can all see it in a little bit of a different light, and think about what God has intended for us in relationships. Okay. You guys have a great day. As always, it's so great hanging out with you. It's going to be a good week, I think. And just we'll be praying for you guys, all of you that put prayers down. If you didn't put prayers and you want some prayers, just go back to the post from Monday morning. And you'll see that there's a way that we can all pray for each other. And I will see you guys later in the week. Thanks. Bye.